1990s, Marvel had multiple animated universes that were totally unrelated to one another in any way. In Universe 92,131, there's Spider-Man and X-Men. In Universe 534,834, there's Fantastic Four. In Universe 569,386, there's Iron Man, and in Universe 400,285, there's the Incredible Hulk. Spider-Man Unlimited is apparently a sequel to Spider-Man the Animated Series, despite all of the evidence that it isn't. Did I get all those numbers right?
Yeah, that's what the wiki says.
Okay, and what's the source for that?
The official handbook of the Marvel Universe.
Oh, well, if it has official in the title, then it must be infallible.
Marvel would never get their own continuity wrong, so it makes sense.
No, no, no! Stop, you fools! You have no idea what you're doing!
Oh, Jesus, here we go.
Do you have any idea what you have done?
Whoa, smart Beavis!
Do you just take everything you see on the fan-made wiki as gospel, even though anyone can edit it to say whatever they want? Do you truly believe the writer of the official handbook even watched all 9 of these series for research before arbitrarily slapping numbers on them all with no rhyme or reason? You're committing the most egregious sin of all, spreading misinformation on the internet!
We were just taking the research that was already done for us.
Do your own research!
Who has time to actually watch all the things they make YouTube videos, wiki pages, and official handbooks about? You'd have to be some kind of greasy loser to spend that much time and energy obsessing over the continuity problems in half a dozen canceled kids' cartoons from over 30 years ago.
Xavier, you already did that video about the other—
I know, I just wanted to hurt your feelings. I'm sorry, tensions are high.
Instead of fighting me, I implore you both, open your minds to what could be. Search for the truth yourselves. I will take you on a journey to see how the Marvel Animated Universe really works by actually watching it.
Is this gonna take long? I'm gonna be at the Fire Academy for the next 5 months, and I really need to focus on my academics.
Let us begin!
Well, for those who don't know, the Marvel Animated Universe is a series of animated shows from 1992 until today that adapt Marvel comic stories in the new medium of animation. Pretty self-explanatory. What we're discussing is how these shows work as an example of a shared fictional universe, with multiple projects existing in the same continuity, not unlike the MCU we know and barely tolerate today. These shows appear generally very self-contained, not requiring viewing any of the others to fully appreciate them individually. And for the longest time, we all assumed that they didn't have much overlap with one another and all existed purely as standalone works. Functionally, they do all work as unconnected projects if you want to see them that way, but with all the hype around shared universes now, it's fun to look back at all these shows through the lens of them potentially being tied together and seeing if and how that works, and how they achieved this concept back then as opposed to the more mainstream MCU approach today. If you research this topic online for even a second, you're going to get bombarded with number soup that makes your eyes glaze over because, truthfully, these don't really mean anything, and the people who made these shows had no say in these Earth number designations. Likewise, these numbers were assigned by people with zero association with these productions. But still, the people who have tackled the topic before have, for whatever reason, concluded that these shows are either all standalones or only somewhat connected to each other. A loose shared universe. But is it that loose? Your mom's loose.
Oh, be a professional!
It's been long accepted that there's like 2 halves of the Marvel Animated Universe because of how the handbooks designated them, with them split up like this, and then later amended to be like this. I think the main driving force behind this model is just that these 5 shows were split across 2 different TV networks, the Fox Kids double feature, and the syndicated Marvel Action Hour block. But when you sit down and watch through them with continuity in mind, it's not an even split at all, and there's a ton of overlap between all 5 of them with one another. Every single one of these shows share some kind of connection with every single other one of these shows, which is what we'll be showing you today. While the answers seemed obvious before, apparently the rabbit hole goes much deeper than we thought when it comes to the inner workings of this strange little series of interconnected shows and overlaps of their continuity. Instead of just taking the handbook's word for it with all these random numbers, let's see if we can come up with our own answer for how continuity works in the Marvel animated universe. Our criteria will be two major things. Evidence from the shows themselves is the one that's the most fun to pick through and discuss. The other is behind-the-scenes creator intent. Because these are indeed still works of fiction created by real people, many of whom are still around today to even ask directly what they think the answer is. And the truth may surprise you. So even if, like we once were, you're a hardcore doubter that there's any kind of shared fictional world here, keep an open mind and see if maybe we can give you a different perspective. Other ground rules to keep in mind. We can't really refer to 616 Comics as a way to fill in the blanks with continuity. This is thoroughly established as a different universe with its own history and its own versions of the characters who exist separately from their source material. For examples, Norman Osborn becomes the Green Goblin after the Hobgoblin, who is Jason Macendale instead of Roderick Kingsley. Tony Stark was taken captive by the Mandarin rather than the communist military leader Wong Chu. Black Cat has an enhanced version of Captain America's super soldier serum pumping through her veins, rather than just being an extremely lucky cat burglar. Kraven the Hunter is a hero and friend to Spider-Man in this world. Tony Stark is the biological son of Walter Stark instead of being adopted by Howard Stark, and their company didn't start to really take off and make their family fortune until Tony was already in his 20s, as opposed to Iron Man being raised a billionaire. Electro is not Max Dillon, he's Reinhold Schmidt, the 60-something-year-old son of the Red Skull. Captain America was never frozen in ice, he was displaced to an alternate dimension where time doesn't pass, and freed 50 years later in our world. This universe does not have a sliding timeline where the present day of the story is perpetually updated to whatever it is in real life. These shows had a hard placement in the 1990s, with concrete dates for their events. Like a lot of them. The mutant nation of Genosha was attacked by Sentinels at the behest of Bastion instead of Cassandra Nova. Peter Parker mistakenly marries a clone of Mary Jane Watson with extra DNA from Hydro Man instead of the real deal, who was lost for several months in an alternate universe. Etc. Even though I've read a metric assload of them in my life, and in the comics is my favorite thing to say in these videos, it doesn't really apply here. We have to just stick with what information is provided by and about the shows, and their comic counterparts are off doing their own thing. Sometimes the story events are shot for shot, word for word, pitch perfect reconstructions of the comics, but most of the time they're vastly different. We just have to try to understand that it has its own world building, and many events won't line up with what we've seen on the page. And lastly, we're not going to take much consideration for the tie-in comics that were created for this universe. At least, not yet. While they were produced with the intent of existing with these shows, they generally contradict them too many times to be really useful for continuity info. Like showing Spider-Man meeting the X-Men for the first time, even though that happened completely differently in the actual shows. We may mention them once or twice, but these may as well be their own video topic at a later date. Alright, that's it. We've watched all of the shows multiple times each. We've taken close to 1,000 pages worth of notes and spreadsheets cataloging every little piece of information available, and even consulted some of the actual creators of these shows to get more detailed and informed takes than the Marvel Handbook could ever give in a short entry in a glossary from 2008. Much like any shared universe, there are definitely going to be cases of the right hand not talking to the left, and continuity issues will pop up, but we'll do our best to explain how those might still work, unless we can't. So let's figure out how all 8 of these cartoons, well, 9 kind of, fit together. This is the surprisingly strong continuity of the 90s Marvel animated universe.
Uh-oh, I smell another cheap cartoon crossover.
Okay, since we have no choice, I guess we're starting at the very beginning. X-Men the Animated Series is a 1992 adaptation of the classic Marvel team of people born with superpowers, who are ostracized by society in an elaborate metaphor for racial, sexual, and gender discrimination.
We interviewed X-Men's original showrunner Eric Lewald and his writing partner and producer Julia Lewald for this project.
I'm Julia Lewald. I am a writer and was a writer on X-Men the Animated Series on specific episodes, and am very happy to report a consulting producer on the new X-Men 97.
I'm Eric Lewald. I was the called the showrunner on the original X-Men series, which means I was in charge of developing the show and then for television and then supervising all the script writing. And on X-Men 97, I'm also a consulting producer, which means the two of us and Larry Houston.
The duo have gone on record that they were initially less focused on the Marvel Universe when the show started, and really just wanted to establish only X-Men characters as well as they could early on.
But when we did X-Men, there was not a thought in our heads about connecting to any of the other Marvel characters or any parts of the universe, because we had way too much to service ourselves. My hardest job in trying to decide how to tell these stories was we had 8 X-Men and Professor X and family and friends and villains and groups of villains and other teams. There were way too many characters to tell 22-minute stories. We kept on having to work very, 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 very hard to pare it down to make the stories more personal and smaller.
The series starts off relatively self-contained from any kind of greater Marvel universe, but character designer, producer, episode director, and living legend Larry Houston is a lifelong Marvel fan that wanted to incorporate more and more subtle nods to the other characters that the X-Men share a world with.
Larry, absolutely. In fact, Larry put dozens and dozens of cameos into X-Men because he loved it so much and he knew that the fans would appreciate it.
Hi, my name is Larry Houston. I was the original producer-director of the series in the 90s. 1992 is when the X-Men first came out, and I'm currently the executive producer on X-Men 97 that's currently out on Disney+. I'm still working with the original characters, advising and making sure they follow the original vision that the fans enjoy. You know, back in 1992, I had no money and no budget, so I had to do a lot of stuff myself. I'm a fanboy. I grew up reading comic books all my life, and so because I had no money to start doling out to people to do the work for me, I had to do the work myself. So I was pretty much also the art director. You know, back then there also was no internet, so I had to physically bring my comic book collection of X-Men to work, put it on a Xerox machine, and start Xeroxing pages off all the different departments.
He began to include cameos and guest appearances of dozens of other Marvel characters to make the world feel larger and more lived in than just what we see with the adventures of the mutants.
I've always had this feeling of putting in cameos all my life. When I grew up as a kid, I had an issue of like Spider-Man, somewhere the early issues, 16, 18, you know, something way back when. And I was reading it, and there was one panel with Spider-Man flipping out the way as Thor went through the scene. You know, Spider-Man says, "Hey, watch where you're throwing that thing," right? And there's no more Thor in the whole book. But at the bottom, I mean, when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, they're in the same universe. As a kid, I was like so excited about it. Stanley at the bottom put, want to see where Thor is going? Go by issue something, Tales of Suspense or whatever the hell it was called. And he was trying to cross-promote books for sales. But for a kid reading, it's like, oh my God, this is so exciting. On the X-Men, I wanted to recreate that same enthusiasm I had to the audience out there.
The only problem is that he wasn't technically allowed to. The show could use pretty much any mutant or X-Men adjacent character they wanted, but stuff like the Avengers or Spider-Man didn't fit into that category. Marvel's character rights were split across different networks, different studios, or different production teams.
In one scene, I tried to put like Spider-Man hanging underneath a ledge as the X-Men fly by in their jet or something. When I had to submit the model sheets to go through for approval, it got kicked back and it said, you can't use Spider-Man. I'm going, but he's on our network.
And when Larry attempted to call out a Spider-Man cameo, I think in the first season, he got slapped down by the legal department. But wait a minute, we're all Marvel characters, right? Can't we just use them? No. For whatever reasons, the legal department said you cannot do that.
He had to do that all in the slide.
They didn't give me an answer, so I went, okay. I couldn't use Spider-Man, so I didn't use him in that aspect.
It's not like today where everything exists in-house all under one roof and you can just casually have any character walk in and say hi to any other character in these cartoons. Back then, you needed to get clearances from the legal department or, God forbid, actually spend money to purchase the rights for other characters to cameo.
And also the fact that Marvel had struggled through so many difficult times financially that they had given away all sorts of rights so that they probably couldn't show Spider-Man without written permission and a fee to Sony or to someone. So we had to go to Marvel's lawyers and they had to call whoever had the rights to Captain America and get, written authorization and probably had to pay a fee.
But Larry had a brilliant idea that was not legally advisable.
I read the script. The writers, believe it or not, most of them had no X-Men knowledge. I had too much, they had zero. I had to get them caught up on what the mythology was.
As he always points it out, as long as it didn't change the story. In other words, if we needed 3 background mutants in a story and we didn't care who they were, Larry might pick them at the storyboard stage. And we might just write mutants 1, 2, and 3. Mm-hmm. Since they didn't have dialogue, they didn't have any specific action.
Kept the original names the writer said, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I submitted it. And I heard nothing.
He figured it was just kind of better to ask forgiveness rather than permission from the Marvel lawyer overlords, and started putting the characters he wanted into X-Men without asking.
Either put the word mutant or alien in front of the word, and it all went through.
He was the main character designer for the show, so he could just drop some random incidental characters in the model sheets, then label their names with something inconspicuous, send it in for approval. Whoever the hell would look at it, not recognize the character because the names were changed, then he'd have free reign to put them in the show as long as their parts were small and didn't affect the plot. Like, yeah, you could sneak in Giant Man and Black Panther into an episode as long as their character models were labeled Human Assault Forces number 1 and African Mutant number 3. The perfect crime.
When the writers would give me huge expository dialogue, it's information to move the story, but it's kind of boring to look at. So when I got those type of scenes, it's like, okay, let me see who's listening to it. So that's when I would pop around the world. You know, Magneto's talking this, and instead of just staying on blah, 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 blah ahead, cut to who's listening, go around the world, who's listening to Magneto. So that's where that came from. That's how I was able to get a lot of things in, you know, all the, like, you know, Captain Britain, Thor, Doctor Strange, and a whole bunch of others that I put into the show. Just never called them what they were really called, their real name.
This is how we get things like several Doctor Strange cameos at multiple points in his life, from Surgeon to Sorcerer Supreme, War Machine spotted alongside Nick Fury and G.W. Bridge watching a broadcast from an anti-mutant political figure, Ghost Rider appears briefly in a flash of Gambit's memories as Cerebro probes his mind, the massive energy waves from the power of the Phoenix Force catch the attention of Thor, Captain Britain, and some big-headed bald jerk.
I heard that.
And Doctor Strange again.
I really think it helped with the enthusiasm for the show, because if you were a regular person watching, you see a cameo, be like a fire hydrant or a ladder, you wouldn't know what it was. But if you're a fan, you're going, oh my God, look, there's Ghost Rider, the blah, blah, blah. There's...
Even quite infamously, the fallout of the Phoenix Saga creates dangerous weather all over Earth, and Spider-Man's first canonical appearance in this entire universe is in X-Men, where he's seen briefly saving civilians with the help of War Machine. This cameo came out a couple of months before the premiere of his own show, as well as Iron Man the Animated Series. So you could almost look at this scene as sort of a teaser for the universe expanding and including those other 2 shows. And, of course, the model sheet for this appearance didn't have Spider-Man written anywhere on it, just so he could get away with it.
Yeah, I think I called it a mutant hand at the best. That's my best merit. Just called it a mutant hand. And see, it was drawn just the arm, and it wasn't colored red. It was just a, you know, black and white drawing.
But someone did eventually notice and asked Larry to never put Spider-Man into a show again without asking. Which is really funny because he did it again anyway, twice. And again, he was clever enough to get away with it.
Houston's decision to keep including cameos and connections in X-Men is how this universe began to really take shape. Not just giving small glimpses at the characters from the other shows, but also establishing characters that didn't have their own shows. There are a lot of characters from the Marvel Universe that float between these series, helping out the headliners before going back to their own business off-screen.
Thor appears as a cameo in X-Men, but a full-on supporting character in Hulk and Fantastic Four. Daredevil keeps the streets clean in Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, and X-Men 97, and we know from other cameos in X-Men that he's fought the Purple Man, Kilgrave, and Typhoid Mary before. Nick Fury floats around between shows, helping where he's needed. Doctor Strange has more cameos than anyone across this universe. Ghost Rider appears also in Hulk and Fantastic Four with the intention of potentially setting him up for a spin-off series that never came to be. And you can follow every stage of Captain America's superhero career, from getting his powers, fighting in World War II in multiple recorded battles with various other superheroes, going to the future year of 1996, all the way to joining the Avengers. And it just happens in the background of all of these shows that aren't even about him. There's a lot of these MAU characters that aren't headliners, but definitely have their own subtle story arcs spread across various series, so we'll make sure to mention them too when it's relevant. Despite some solid evidence so far, X-Men's relationship to the surrounding shows do have a few issues to iron out that people love to bring up as evidence that there's no chance these are all connected. But I say there's a way to make it work if you kinda squint your eyes a little bit. Alright. A fellow Gamma scientist, Walter Lankowski, aka the Sasquatch, appears as a member of Wolverine's former superhero team Alpha Flight in Canada during X-Men Season 2, Episode 5, Repo Man. He also appears in an episode of The Incredible Hulk, Season 1, Episode 6, Man to Man, Beast to Beast. Both episodes were written by Len Wein, but there is a slight confusion in the Hulk episode as to how long Lankowski has been the Sasquatch.
The beast within is taking control. Soon it will consume me completely.
The Hulk episode makes it seem as if he's only recently become the Sasquatch and is losing control of his furry alter ego.
You left us. That was wrong.
I hope you missed me, Sasquatch.
On the other hand, X-Men implies that he's been the Sasquatch for a number of years because Wolverine recognizes him from his past tenure at Alpha Flight, which he left to join X-Men instead because they had a better dental plan or something. However, in Hulk, it is never explicitly stated just how long ago Walter first recreated the Hulk experiment.
You've been monitoring the Hulk
Since the day of his first appearance.
And it could be that he's been Sasquatch for several years, but only recently lost control of that form.
Lankowski Journal Series.
I may come out of this green, but I should be able to see clearly. Day 35. The change comes more often now, unexpectedly. The animal instincts like a tidal wave.
Changing me into...
The Hulk series constantly maintains that Bruce Banner became the Hulk several years ago, without attributing a specific number.
You remember the news about that gamma reactor explosion in New Mexico a few years ago?
How they all cursed that historic day long ago when so many lives irreversibly altered course.
So that widens our gap of time considerably for when Walter became the Sasquatch in an attempt to recreate Banner's research. He could have done that in the mid to late 80s for all we know, because they don't specify. That gives him plenty of time to join Alpha Flight, hang out with Wolverine before Logan switched teams, and then in the time since seeing Wolverine again, Walter's been losing control when shifting to his gamma-powered form. There's no direct contradictions in this one. This all works, actually. It's just a little confusing initially, but it checks out.
I saw that report you did on Sasquatch. It was fair and even-handed.
Scarlet Witch appears in X-Men Season 4, Episode 17, Family Ties, where she learns that she's Magneto's daughter. She's also a member of Iron Man's team Forceworks in 17 episodes of Iron Man series, though her costume, hairstyle, and accent are different in both series.
We are here to get revenge for one who has fallen in your path.
I sense a strong probability that the Mandarin's bug was undetected because it was not here when Jimmy did his electronic security sweep.
Some people think this counts as evidence of them not being connected, but her accent is even inconsistent in the MCU.
What happened to your accent?
What happened to yours? Details are fuzzy, man.
And costumes, voices, and hairstyles are all subject to change in any shared universe. The Superman of the DCAU changed voice actors like 4 or 5 times, but there's no doubt that these are all the same Superman appearing in multiple projects with a shared continuity. So please don't get hung up on the idea that a voice recast is some damning evidence against shows being connected, because it's really not. Though a voice actor reprising their role for a crossover in a different series is encouraging when it does happen. Nothing about Scarlet Witch's appearance in Iron Man says she can't also be Magneto's daughter and the sister of Quicksilver. She even quits Iron Man's team and is absent for the majority of Iron Man Season 2.
And we are going to relocate Forceworks.
All of you?
and that gives her plenty of time to grow her hair out and reconnect with her mutant heritage with Pietro. We also know that he's on X Factor, which is a whole different superhero team, so he's busy with his own thing. When she calls him at the beginning of the episode, they make it seem like they haven't been together for a little while.
Activity that I can...
Quicksilver, it's your sister.
I told you never to use X Factor override frequencies except in an emergency.
That's because she was busy with Iron Man. Then when that's settled, she goes back to her way worse style and outfit, then joins back up with Tony after he's learned a lesson in humility and trust in his Season 2 finale. So, I think that works too. What else is a big problem?
Dr. McCoy, what's the trouble?
Mr. President.
Dr. Richards, it's good to see you again.
Likewise, Mr. President.
Okay, the most major point of contention is...
Who's in the White House right now?
An asshole.
Because former mutant-hating politician Senator Robert Kelly is elected President of the United States in the Season 1 finale of X-Men, and remains President even until X-Men 97, meaning he's served 2 terms, and yet over in the Marvel Action Hour block, we get a whole lot of Big Bubba Bill. We do have a proposed solution to this that we'll present later on, but keep it in your mind for now that we weirdly have 2 presidents at the same time according to these shows. That being said, X-Men serves as a perfect base for this small-screen shared universe, and the efforts of Eric and Julia Lewald, Larry Houston, and plenty of other talents led to a soft formation of this world that's still expanding to this day. Eventually, if there are a few kinks to work out, we'll figure it out as we go. But this is solid so far, and already has me questioning the 2-party system theory we've been all led to believe for so long. Maybe there's more to all this after all.
Look, if you don't simmer down, I'm gonna lose my cool.
I'd like to invite you and your lady friend to simmer down now.
What?
Starting in November of 1994, Spider-Man the Animated Series, much like the others, tended to work just fine as a standalone, not relying on having seen any of the other series for context in its own storytelling. But it does cross over with every other MAU show except for The Incredible Hulk at one point or another. John Semper Jr. was the showrunner for Spidey and was reportedly very protective over how this particular version of the character was written, so he mandated that Spider-Man couldn't directly appear in other shows, but any show could cross over with his. That's why Spider-Man's appearances have been pretty fleeting, or Larry Houston had to do his signature Scarlet Spider costume trick. We'll explain that in a bit.
Whoa! I don't think I even want to hear your story.
But Spidey's show welcomed a bit of everyone else for crossovers, and there's a ton to go over for continuity info. Season 2 has the 2-episode arc where Spider-Man seeks out the help of X-Men when his powers begin mutating in unexpected ways that threaten to take away his humanity. Despite some minor design differences, like Cyclops ditching his yellow trunks and the character designer miscoloring Gambit's eyes, this is for sure the same X-Men from their animated series. Impressively, they managed to get the entire cast of the X-Men to appear in these episodes and use their iconic theme song, so there's just no question about it. And Spidey has great chemistry with this version of the X-Men.
You got that right. A regular ace. Nice working with you, kid.
Real nice.
Thanks. I don't know what to say.
Iron Man's fake publicity stunt wedding to Spider-Woman with a robot decoy and Spider-Man's wedding to MJ's secret water clone were both officiated by the same priest. Talk about bad luck.
Later on in Spider-Man Season 3, Iron Man and War Machine both pop up, with the same voice actors from the other series, James Avery and Robert Hayes, but slightly different costumes. See, the art style for all of these shows are very similar, but ever so slightly different, and there's going to be a lot of modifying character designs to fit each show's aesthetic. Every series had their own designers take a crack at the costumes, so visually, there won't be the most consistency with some characters. It's just like different comics being drawn by different artists, but still sharing continuity with one another. Every show has its own unique art style, and every character crossing over is going to be changed to fit whatever show they're in. Much like the DC AU, you gotta put it out of your mind that a different costume or hair color or facial design choice somehow means it's a different iteration of the character entirely. Batman showed up 3 times in Static Shock with a slightly different design every time, but he was still the same version of Batman in all three of them. Joker's lips disappearing and then coming back don't make him a different Joker. Well, hold on. Let's not even get started on Superman's cheekbones or Catwoman's hair color.
What is it, Willie?
I'm not sure. I feel a disturbance.
Sometimes a character's hairstyle or facial hair will change, or their outfit will be different, and that doesn't completely preclude continuity ties. You change your hair sometimes. You wear different clothes all the time. Hopefully. So, fictional characters do too. That being said, Iron Man and War Machine's armor look a tad different, but still pretty damn similar to how they appear in their own show during the arc where Venom returns and Carnage is born. And come on, Tony is always building and wearing new sets of armor. The fact that all these suits are pretty much just the modular armor from the comics is such a nice touch of consistency. The setup for this Spidey crossover is that Stark Enterprises is doing an expo in New York for some of the new machines that Baron Mordo wants to steal using the symbiotes as henchmen.
He must be here to use this technology to transport Dormammu to our dimension.
Initially, Rhodey is the only one in New York, and they state that Iron Man is still at their corporate headquarters on the West Coast in LA.
Our plan is to actually teleport solid matter instantaneously from New York, where all of you are, to our labs here in Los Angeles.
Which tracks perfectly with his own show because the main base for Stark Enterprises is in Los Angeles. After Venom and Carnage rough up Rhodey, Tony suits up and heads to New York to get some payback, and then helps Spidey beat them and Dormammu. One of the writers for Spider-Man the Animated Series, Stan Berkowitz, said in an interview with Toon Zone in 2006 that they had a mandate to not change Iron Man from the other series, but otherwise had free reign to use him for their show for this crossover.
Obviously, we couldn't change him from the way he appeared on the other show, but aside from that, I didn't feel any other restraints.
Iron Man's story editor, who oversees continuity and works to eliminate plot holes, is in agreement. In a 2008 interview on Toon Zone, Greg Johnson said,
"Those of us in the trenches did want to keep the Marvel Universe somewhat consistent through the various series, but casual connections are pretty much the extent of what we could do. Most of the time, we're just happy if we don't contradict the continuity of other shows. That way, viewers who want to make connections aren't deterred from doing so."
Knowing these shows were made with that mentality makes me even more confident in claiming these were meant to be connected, even if they had to be very careful about it at times. Even the people behind the shows wanted you to think of them as a shared universe, navigating contradictions and keeping the shows consistent so viewers would feel encouraged to see them as such. I find it fascinatingly self-contradictory how the X-Men the Animated Series crossover in Spider-Man is accepted with open arms as a definitive connection, but this Iron Man one doesn't have the same fan reaction at all. Like, some people online are really insistent that this must be some heretofore completely unseen Iron Man and War Machine that can't be the same ones from the other show because... reasons? Why is this valid and this isn't? Does it really just come down to the handbook numbering again? Nothing about these episodes makes it so this can't be the same Iron Man and War Machine. The fact that they even have the same voices from the other series seems like a really good sign, too. Kind of a bummer that Doctor Strange wasn't here for that two-parter, considering Dormammu's his nemesis, but he also has an episode in Spider-Man's show where he saves Mary Jane Watson from a mind-controlling cult led by Baron Mordo. He's also seen in a German snow lodge with his girl Clea and Mary Jane during an episode of X-Men. She's even got the same color scheme and the yellow sweater. Maybe she took a vacation after the cult thing and these sorcerers were checking up on her.
We'll have to figure that out in the timeline stuff. This isn't the when video yet, just the how.
Spider-Man gave us the MAU version of Captain America's first full appearance in Season 4, when we learned that Black Cat's father witnessed his origin story when he was a kid after being tricked to spy on Project Rebirth by the Red Skull. A few weeks later in the real world, X-Men gave us a flashback to Captain America and Wolverine hunting the Skull in France with the help of the Howling Commandos, including the young version of Nick Fury Spidey comes to meet as director of S.H.I.E.L.D. decades later.
I promise you, Skull, there will be a next time.
Spider-Man's show then follows that up with a final battle between Captain America and Red Skull, where they're pulled into stasis by the power of a Hydra Doomsday weapon hidden underneath the Bronx. Both of them remain trapped here, unaffected by time for decades until Spidey witnesses the Red Skull's sons free them in the 90s. But hey, didn't Cap also show up in the Fantastic Four show? If he was permanently trapped in the time vortex, when did he have time for that?
Whoa, hold up, we're not there yet. You gotta talk about Hulk.
What's there to talk about? He doesn't show up in Spider-Man.
Well, there's a good reason for that. While Fantastic Four and Iron Man were released in syndication, the Hulk's TV rights were owned by the network UPN, who were competitors with Fox, and didn't want to share him. John Semper Jr. originally wrote the Secret Wars crossover arc in Spider-Man Season 5 with the Hulk, but couldn't get the rights.
Oh, so that's why the Lizard is inexplicably a main character in that arc. And they portray him as being so tough that the combined forces of all these heroes are somehow struggling to take him down. Yeah, that would have made so much more sense with the Hulk. They even would have had him turn into Smart Hulk with Banner's mind.
Here I am, with my rational mind trapped in this lizard body.
Plus, if that went according to plan, that would have made Secret Wars the official big crossover between the entire MAU, with at least one representative character from all 5 shows. This roster of heroes wasn't chosen at random, guys. The plan was clearly to have Secret Wars be the MAU's endgame, since chronologically this was the last thing released. Until now. This would have been the big crossover with everyone that serves as a finale to everything they've done so far. And, it still functions like that to a degree.
Sadly, Spidey and Hulk have never officially met in the MAU in animated form, but they share a ton of mutual friends and connections, so they're not as far as you'd think.
It's just a shame that the Hulk's character rights were already becoming a problem back then. They could only manage one X-Men character for budget reasons.
I've made contact with those of this planet who are rebelling against the evil ones. I've explained your plan, but their leader wants to speak with you.
They also had to cut an entire episode of Secret Wars focused on the X-Men, because Fox Kids didn't want to pay extra to get all of their voice actors back again. The X-Men cast are all from Canada, and apparently union rules make hiring them for American productions like Spider-Man way more expensive.
That meant Semper had to get creative to include them and used only Storm, and not the Storm you're probably used to. Storm has had 3 voice actresses in this universe. Season 1, she was played by an unknown white actress, but the producer realized that was kind of weird in a show all about inclusiveness and with only one black woman lead, so they brought in American actress Iona Morris to re-record all of Season 1 before it aired. Season 1 aired for the first time with Morris as planned. But she was an American actor, and that meant that she had to be paid residuals for every episode's reruns, and the network decided they didn't want to do that. So they pivoted again to a Canadian voice actress, Alison Seeley Smith, who is the voice of Storm from that point forward, even to this day. And to avoid paying Morris for those reruns like her contract stated they had Seeley Smith go back and redo all of Storm's voice in Season 1, meaning Storm's lines in that show were dubbed 3 different times. Watching the show back then, you'd probably notice the difference on multiple airings.
There is a way. On Genosha, Gambit saw the man in charge of the Sentinels. If we look inside his mind, perhaps we can find that man.
There is a way. On Genosha, Gambit saw the man in charge of the Sentinels. If we look inside his mind, perhaps we can find that man.
John Semper knew about all this and decided that his clever loophole for having an X-Men character in Secret Wars would be to bring in only Storm and have her voiced by Iona Morris again, since they wouldn't have to pay extra for her because she wasn't based in Canada.
Power of the wind, heed my call!
Basically, it's a big complicated mess of both productions being cheap about paying their actors and having to work around it.
So, is that the same Fantastic Four and Doctor Doom from their show?
Oh cool, this time the Fantastic Four are wearing their Heroes Reborn costumes designed by Jim Lee.
I get that they were just wearing different costumes, but now their voices are all different too.
Well, it's supposed to be them, though only one of them has the same voice. Quentin Flynn reprised his role as Human Torch from Season 2. Semper hated the Fantastic Four series and their voice cast, so he says he recast them for Spider-Man. And the wording of recast makes me think his intent was that it was the same versions of the characters, played by different actors. And just because they sound 75% different and change clothes doesn't mean they can't be the FF from the other series. We talked about that already, voices and clothes, voices and clothes. The only wrinkle continuity-wise is that Sue says Dr. Doom's face was burned by acid.
For myself.
The horrible acid burns that ruined your face, they're gone.
But in his origin flashback episode of Fantastic Four, it seemed more like he was disfigured in an explosion.
Maybe there was acid in the explosion?
I could live with that. Yeah, fuck it, whatever. Or maybe that is a jar of acid back there. Good God, we're not even halfway done yet.
Huh. I didn't know Gwen Stacy was in this universe.
She isn't. Observe carefully. At a glance, what you are witnessing may appear pedestrian, but it is actually a nexus moment that acts as a thread between concurrent events.
Huh. The handbook didn't mention this.
Oh, will you forget that thing already?
Fantastic Four and Iron Man premiered the same day in September 1994 in the television block The Marvel Action Hour, hosted by Stan Lee with special intros for every episode.
Fantastic Four Season 1 is just like Iron Man Season 1. Light on continuity and very corny, with a lot of Bill Clinton appearances for some reason. The most we see connecting them is that Iron Man and War Machine can be seen fighting Ultimo on the TV in the Baxter Building. Unhappy with the show's reception and style, the network rebooted Fantastic Four and Iron Man after their first seasons to make them match more closely to the tone and style of X-Men, which was a smash hit success. They were given a huge overhaul to their character designs, voice cast, and even replaced their original shared showrunner, Ron Friedman. Fantastic Four Season 2 was instead run... What the fuck name is that?
Fantastic Four Season 2 was instead run by Tom Tataranowicz and our old friend Larry Houston.
When I left the X-Men, I did the X-Men seasons 1, 2, 3, 4, and after that, I left to do the second season of the Fantastic Four. One of the reasons I left is that they asked me to join. They wanted me to do what I did to the X-Men to the Fantastic Four.
And you know what that means?
Unauthorized cameos!
Hey, look, Hydro Man's water clone from Spider-Man Season 5 is a member of the Frightful Four, and Daredevil helps the FF after they lose their powers. Last time we saw him, he cleared Peter Parker of being framed for a crime and told Spider-Man that Wilson Fisk was the Kingpin. His voice is different, but otherwise this really feels like the same Daredevil. Larry Houston himself even told me about a connection between X-Men and Fantastic Four I didn't know about.
I don't think they realize, but there's a scene where in X-Men, Storm is chasing down Sauron, the green lizard guy. There's a scene of myself and my assistant producer. You see these civilians working at an art table. They're drawing. They go by the window and they look like this. They see them fly by. Fast forward to the Fantastic Four. There's a scene where the Silver Surfer is going around the city, and I took the exact storyboards. I put them into the FF. And it's a Silver Surfer going by, and we do the same thing, like, what?
I guess this is the same building in both shows, passed by two different superhero chase sequences.
Fantastic Four Season 2 really pulls everything together, especially in the episode Nightmare in Green, which is the introduction to the MAU version of the Hulk. In this episode, Hulk's best pal, Rick Jones, hangs out with the Human Torch, and they take the new Fantasticycle for a test drive, where they pass by the rest of the Marvel Universe along the way. Larry Houston once again uses Spider-Man without asking.
Let's see. I know I did it in Fantastic Four because it wasn't Spider-Man, so I figured I could get away with it. You know, nobody's gonna come after me for that.
But this time his solution is to have him wearing the Scarlet Spider costume.
Spider-Man's problematical because everybody knows who he is. I mean, even the person who makes copies at Fox knows who that is. So it's like doing Scarlet Spider, they wouldn't know what the hell they're looking at because his costume is different enough that they go, huh, oh, okay. And they approve it without giving me any static, you know.
So he could technically argue that it's not Spider-Man if asked about it. He used this trick in Season 4 of the X-Men, during the dark alternate timeline where Professor X never created the X-Men. You can see an evil version of the Avengers hunting down mutant freedom fighters, including Iron Man, Captain America, Daredevil, Giant Man, the Wasp, and there he is again! Looking good, Spidey! So while Scarlet Spider does appear in these shows as well as an alternate universe clone of Peter Parker,
I don't want to create any continuity problems, so if you think it's better to be Spidey in a Riley costume, that's cool.
in X-Men and Fantastic Four, he's supposed to be the original Webhead himself, just wearing a different outfit to skirt some legal issues.
If he's wearing the Ben Reilly fit, you must acquit. Back in Nightmare and Green, Jones and Torch fly past the entire cast of the X-Men as they hang out on the observation deck of the Empire State Building.
Yes, I'm the connective tissues. I created the Marvel Larryverse. I connected everything together because I was in charge of both shows. So when I went to the Fantastic Four, I put in cameos from I cameoed the X-Men in FF. I couldn't use them, the costumes, but I put them in their civilian outfits.
But that's not even the most mind-blowing moment, because they also zoom by the Juggernaut rising from the Hudson River. This is an actual shared moment between this and X-Men the Animated Series. In the original Phoenix Saga, the Kree superhero Gladiator showed up to obtain a galactic super MacGuffin. It's not really that relevant. To show he meant business, he threw the Juggernaut off the coast of Scotland far into the Atlantic Ocean. Later on, in The Juggernaut Returns, we see that he walked all the way back to New York across the bottom of the ocean because his powers make it so he doesn't need to breathe air. He makes landfall in the early morning hours in the exact same location, shown just from a slightly different angle. That means that X-Men's Juggernaut Returns and Fantastic Four's Nightmare and Green take place on the same day, which is especially fun because Juggernaut walks from Manhattan to Westchester to break into the X-Mansion, and Professor X lures him into the Danger Room to be attacked by a simulation of the Incredible Hulk. Meanwhile, an hour's drive away back in Manhattan, the real Hulk on that same day has been tricked by Dr. Doom into attacking the Fantastic Four and battles the Thing in the streets.
It probably would have gotten rejected if I had included the Juggernaut to show him coming up, but just doing a hand, and you can see the distinctive design of his uniform. It was the Juggernaut, and it's like, okay, yeah, FF is happening somewhere else in New York at the same time. Yeah, if you watch the shows, you know that I put them in a connected universe. I wanted fans, because I'm a fan, that if they saw my X-Men and they saw the FF, they go, oh shit, they're in the same place, this is cool,
I guess the X-Men visited the Empire State Building the previous night, and then the morning all of them were off doing different activities before having to be called back to the mansion to fight Juggernaut. Lucky for Dr. Doom, they were distracted from his evil plot over in the city that morning.
Speaking of Doom, when he later steals the power cosmic from the Silver Surfer, he goes on a rampage to fight the Avengers and the X-Men again. He's seen at Xavier's school, which is surrounded by buildings for some reason, and turns the X-Men's Blackbird to stone.
Those are the least controversial things I could put in because it was two different networks, so I couldn't use the X-Men, but I could use the jet. A jet's a jet, so nobody could complain about it.
But also, how is Captain America here? I thought he was trapped in the vortex.
Okay, we've put it off enough. We need to figure out the Captain America problem because he just keeps showing up all over the place. I've thought about it and I think I know how it works. The solution is, Beyonder is not an asshole. Think about it. In the Secret Wars arc of Spider-Man, the Beyonder wanted to test Spidey's leadership capabilities against impossible odds by transporting him and a bunch of villains against their will to an alien planet, then letting the villains run rampant and take over for a full year before Spidey was allowed to intervene. Beyonder even pulled Red Skull out of stasis for this game. Spidey chose his list of heroes to counter these villains, and he selected Captain America to be removed from the antimatter vortex to fight Red Skull once again. After Spidey successfully led the heroes to liberate Battleworld, the Beyonder said he would erase everyone's memories and return them to their rightful places on Earth.
You will all be returned to your rightful places on Earth, and you will retain no memory of this event. All must be exactly as it was.
Goodbye. But he doesn't explain in detail what that means for Cap and Skull, since they were plucked from an alternate dimension that serves as the power source for a now destroyed Doomsday weapon. The facility the Vortex was housed in is demolished along with the weapon itself. There's no way to free Cap any other way. He's trapped forever if he goes back to the Vortex. Seeing as how this version of the Beyonder is a benevolent, multiverse-saving good guy that was working with Madam Web, it'd be really shitty of him to put Cap back in there. Skull, maybe, whatever, he's a Nazi, fuck him. But Cap doesn't deserve that. So, what if Beyonder just put Cap back on Earth and left him to find a new life for himself there. That way, it makes sense why he'd soon after have joined the already established Avengers, and then he'd be free to appear in X-Men 97 not long after that, in-universe. Cap opened his eyes after Secret Wars, having no idea how or why he was back, but he just took the win and moved on. That's my theory, anyway.
I could buy that. I just hope Beyonder didn't put Red Skull right next to him. That could get ugly. So, She-Hulk is on the Avengers too.
Yeah, what about it?
There's something kinda screwy here. Hulk was introduced in Nightmare in Green, then got his own show. In season 1 of that series, his cousin Jennifer Walters becomes the She-Hulk while they fight Doctor Doom. But we already saw her as She-Hulk in Fantastic Four 3 episodes before her cousin debuted. And she was already on the Avengers and had her powers. And right after she gets her powers, Banner takes her to meet the Fantastic Four in the episode Fantastic Fortitude, where the Thing mentions the last time they met.
Hey, Thing! Rick Jones, remember me?
Oh, yeah. You were the kid that was always hanging around Doc Banner, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, shit, that is weird. I mean, even barring the network differences, people are really certain the Fantastic Four and Hulk shows are at least in the same universe, and they definitely are. But the order of events is messy here. Jen shows up with powers, then we meet Bruce, then Bruce sees Jen get those powers, then they meet the Fantastic Four again, and Ben Grimm is meeting She-Hulk for the first time. I think the only way to make sense of this is to break the release order.
Can we do that?
Yeah, why not? Half of X-Men's 3rd season got delayed and released during season 5, so the story made no sense at all when it aired. I'm sure if we did an actual timeline for all the story events, we'd have to rearrange more than a few things. The best way to make sense of this is that Fantastic Four Season 2 probably takes place over a longer period of time than we thought, maybe more like 2 years rather than just 1, and the episodes need to be rearranged like this to make sense of She-Hulk. My favorite thing about her in Fantastic Four is that every time we see her in this show, she's flanked by Iron Man to assure us that he's canon too. He's wearing a slightly different armor set, but that's unmistakably the same base design as Iron Man Season 2. And lastly, there's a subtle implied story arc between X-Men and Fantastic Four regarding Storm's godson, Mjolnir. We're introduced to him in Season 2 of X-Men, where we learn that Storm helped raise him before discovering he's a speedster mutant. He's an original character created for the show and designed after Larry Houston's son.
It was inspired by my son, yeah. I have 2 boys, Adrian and Andrew, so it was inspired by my older son, Adrian, at the time.
Mjolnir is later seen in Africa as Magneto invites mutants from all over the globe to meet there and board his transport to the mutant safe haven in space, Asteroid M. During the offloading of the citizens from Magneto's Asteroid M, we can see Mjolnir scoping the place out at a distance. And he's standing next to the king himself, Black Panther.
I used the Black Panther in one episode as a cameo. He's called African Mutant Number 3. And that's how I got him onto the screen, because he wasn't depicted or written down in the model sheet as the Black Panther. No.
Maybe T'Challa figured he ought to go see what this whole Asteroid M thing is about too, and met Mjolnir during the stakeout. Later on in the Fantastic Four, the heroes are taken to Wakanda against their will by T'Challa to help him train against real superhumans in battle. After he explains the situation to them, he shows them around Wakanda, and we can see Mjolnir lives there now, and is talking to a girl who kind of looks like young Storm, the lady who raised him. There's some interesting Freudian implications about this exchange, with him seemingly flirting with her, but either way, I like to think that Black Panther met Mjolnir, took a liking to the lad, and invited him to live in Wakanda. Well, okay, that was my theory, and then I talked to Larry, and he just confirmed it, so I guess that's what happened.
I kind of imply that, because at the time I couldn't rewrite the scripts, but I could imply there's a untold story there that, a person like yourself or me, you could fill in the blanks of but I wanted to show there was a connection between the two.
Season 1 of this show may be some of the cheesiest, least desirable material in the MAU. But Season 2 redeems it and then some, with much better stories, voice acting, animation, and of course, all this continuity info that's just icing on the top.
Surfer, are you alright?
Weak. My legs and arms are heavy.
Mom Spaghetti, he's nervous.
MAU Captain America's most defining feature is randomly turning his white sleeves blue at any given time, no matter how high the animation budget gets. It's an extra superpower, really. Iron Man the Animated Series has a really kick-ass theme song in Season 2. Much like Fantastic Four, that first season isn't really anything to write home about, but I'm glad they did a big creative overhaul because both shows benefited greatly from it. As we discussed before, Iron Man from this series appears in Spider-Man and Fantastic Four, even if he didn't talk in the latter. Over here, he mostly keeps to himself and runs his own team of heroes he's gathered called ForceWorks, which consists of Hawkeye, Spider-Woman, Scarlet Witch, War Machine, and the Sentry. No, a different one, and it's not spelled the same. We mentioned earlier that Scarlet Witch seems to not visually match her depiction in X-Men, but this could come down to artistic license in both series, and we don't have anything specifically written about her backstory that says these can't be the same Wanda in different time periods. Her family, origin, history, personal life, and status as a mutant are never really touched on in Iron Man. It's so vague about stuff like that, it actually gives us a lot of leeway, and it's more helpful than being specific sometimes.
Better to say nothing at all than something that's contradictory. Same with Captain America's appearance in X-Men 97.
That's exactly right. A nice connection between Spider-Man and Iron Man is Nick Fury appears in both series, voiced by Philip Abbott.
Name's Fury. Colonel Nick Fury. I call the shots around here.
It can't be. The war hero?
Now listen up. From now on, 0 mistakes. Always up to something new, eh, Stuck? Hey, you look a little rough around the edges. You doing okay?
We also see a precedent has been set that James Rhodes is chummy with S.H.I.E.L.D. guys and will hang out with Nick Fury on the S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier just like he did in his X-Men cameo. Iron Man meets the former Howling Commando Dum Dum Dugan, who we last saw in X-Men's World War II flashback. He's aged so well. Iron Man also worked in conjunction with the Fantastic Four to set up the Hulk series. Both of them have an episode with Bruce Banner and the Hulk, voiced by Ron Perlman, as a backdoor pilot for his own series. While FF's Hulk episode was much more focused on the universe at large and MAU world building, Iron Man's Hulk episode serves as a better setup for the Hulk himself by using time travel to show us his origin story, and introduce us to his nemesis, the Leader.
Banner goes into the Leader's origin story here as well, but it looks a little different than how it was depicted in the proper Hulk show. Best guess is that the story doesn't line up because Banner's the one telling it, and wasn't there for Leader becoming mutated by Gamma Waste. In the Hulk series, the Leader himself is the one explaining it. It's flashbacks from different people's perspectives, and one of them might be a more reliable narrator because it happened to him directly.
Interesting. So what about President Clinton?
Shit. That's right.
Okay, let's talk about President Clinton. We established that in X-Men Season 1, there's an unnamed woman that's the President of the United States. I talked to the two lead writers of the show, Julia and Eric Lewald, and they actually told me her name.
She does in my head canon, and I share it with you now because I want this to be her name. Margaret Jean Louise Avery.
They wrote the thing so they can just say stuff like that, and it's canon. We have to just accept it. So, President Margaret Jean Louise Avery's term is up, and X-Men Season 1 is building to the 1992 presidential election. Senator Robert Kelly runs on a staunch anti-mutant platform until the X-Men save him from an assassination attempt by Mystique, and stop Magneto from killing him, and save him from having his brain replaced by a computer by rogue Sentinels.
You will remove Senator Kelly's brain and replace it with a computer.
What?
He has a change of heart and becomes the pro-mutant politician.
Dr. McCoy, what's the trouble?
Mr. President.
And then apparently wins against Avery, who would have had a second term had Kelly died, according to Bishop, who is from an alternate future. But in Season 1 of both Iron Man and Fantastic Four, Bill Clinton shows up as the president.
Justin Hammer tried to sell me the idea of Iron Man having an evil Confederate. And it is with a very heavy heart that I say we do not know why the Fantastic Four will become criminal menaces.
Twice in Fantastic Four and 3 times in Iron Man. I think the showrunner of both series, Ron Friedman, was just a fan of him or something, since he has a story credit on all of these. I wonder if the dress is canon to the MAU. So, let's run it down. In a flashback, Tony Stark at some point in the past shook hands with Bill Clinton in front of the White House. Later, after becoming Iron Man, Tony Stark is framed for a stock market-related crime by his enemies, and then argues his case over a video conference with Clinton.
Then you can assure me you did not have a hand in causing military panic around the globe?
Let's drop the formalities a second, Bill. You know me. I had no part in any of it.
He definitely calls him Mr. President over the call.
It's good to see you.
You too, Mr. President.
In Iron Man to the Second Power, Mandarin and MODOK build an evil robot disguised as Iron Man and use it to extort the world while threatening to release a deadly bioweapon over all major cities. You know, typical Tuesday. Justin Hammer makes a call to Bill and Al Gore to lie about Iron Man being a villain. We learn that Justin Hammer campaigned for Ross Perot in the 1992 election.
Thanks for your concern. It's funny. Hammer campaigned for Perot, and now he's suddenly my best friend.
Clinton is later seen in that episode with his wife Pokemon Go to the polls as they watch the broadcast of demands from the fake Iron Man.
Dr. Richards, it's good to see you again.
Likewise, Mr. President.
And in a now banned episode you can't find on Disney Plus, Bill makes a call to the Fantastic Four and Ben Grimm says,
"Just 'cause I didn't vote for you, don't mean I ain't behind you all the way, big guy."
I appreciate that.
Wait a minute. Maybe that's it. Maybe no one voted for Bill Clinton. At least not directly. In the U.S. Constitution's 25th Amendment, Section 3 states that the President of the United States can transfer powers to the Vice President pro tempore, meaning for the time being, if he is unable to perform the duties of his office. This means the Vice President takes temporary control as acting President until such time as the President can petition to have powers restored after the interval concludes. This is a unique but totally legally plausible scenario in the U.S. government. Since we know definitively that Kelly won the 1992 election and was sworn in 1993, that's locked in. But one thing we never see is his Vice President. Kelly is sworn in X-Men Season 2, but we don't see him again until Season 4 when Magneto creates Asteroid M as a new home for mutant refugees in 1995. What if Robert Kelly temporarily stepped down as president for a few months during the year 1994, dealing with the PTSD of his failed assassination attempt by Mystique, kidnapping by Magneto, and further kidnapping by Master Mold during his campaign for the presidency? If that were the case, then his vice president, one William Clinton, would temporarily have taken office as acting president. And in such cases, when one president dies, resigns, or temporarily steps down, the vice president is allowed to appoint his own VP instead of the Speaker of the House automatically being promoted to that position. This would allow Bill Clinton to bring Al Gore in as his temporary VP during the events of Iron Man and Fantastic Four's respective first seasons. However, Kelly could petition to become president again, and Section 4 of the 25th Amendment states that his role as president would be restored if a majority of the cabinet and Congress agreed that the president is able to take back his status. So Kelly could have stepped down for a time after a year of being the president, let his saxophone-playing friend slut it up in the Oval Office, and then resume his presidency for the rest of his term and apparently a second one, considering he's still president by 1997 and preparing to leave office. This is so stupid.
Is he putting us on?
Quiet! Ugh, at least it sounds like X-Men 97 is sticking with fictional presidents so that this won't get any worse.
In other news, Graydon Creed edged ahead in polls today as President Kelly takes heat about the situation in Santo Marco.
Now, this is all obviously a lot of conjecture played up for laughs. You could buy this intentionally kind of ridiculous theory, or we can just accept that Season 1 of both of these shows have a much looser place in all this canon. Ron Friedman obviously didn't plan these two shows with continuity ties to the Fox Kids block in mind, although the showrunners that replaced him for Season 2 obviously did. So if you want to believe that the pre-reboot Action Hour shows aren't canon to the MAU, I can understand that. However, Season 2 of both shows definitely are, to such a degree that it's almost impossible to ignore. And both of those seasons do follow up on continuity from before the reboot, like this flashback in Iron Man where he's wearing the Model 1 armor from the first season, or all of the events surrounding Silver Surfer being heavily referenced in the rebooted Fantastic Four. So these events still happened, but maybe a slightly different version of them where you can just imagine Kelly was president instead, and maybe the writing was a little better. There's still part of it, but just a little loose. It's just a little loose. The last series to premiere for the longest time was The Incredible Hulk, dropping in 1996 after 2 backdoor pilots in the previous 2 shows.
The Incredible Hulk is probably the simplest show to wrap your head around of all of these. Even though Ron Perlman didn't reprise his role as Bruce Banner and the Hulk, with them both being recast with Neil McDonough and Lou Ferrigno respectively, this is still the same Hulk, Iron Man, and Fantastic Four set up. We know this because he has a sequel episode to both of those crossovers in season 1 of his show. And both Iron Man and the FF mention their previous adventures with the not-so-jolly Green Giant.
Holy Jekyll and Hyde, Doc Banner is that big old moldy green avocado one.
He might know where to find someone. Bruce Banner.
Dr. Banner? Come with me.
Your condition knocked me through a wall, Doc. I mean, it ain't exactly something I'd overlook.
Dr. Doom has a plan to take over Washington, D.C., but is thwarted by the Hulk and his cousin Jennifer Walters, who has gained his same powers.
Doom starts this episode already knowing that Bruce Banner is the Hulk, which he learned in Fantastic Four.
As I suspected, the Hulk has a human alter ego. And now, for the answer.
Who's there?
Allow me to introduce myself, Dr. Banner. Victor Von Doom.
He even addresses him with some familiarity since the Hulk has already foiled his plans once before.
Hulk smash!
Oh, yes, I forgot. A very left-brain personality. Always a pleasure to see you, Dr. Banner.
What do you want with us, Doom?
The next episode after that, he takes her to meet the Fantastic Four, and she decides she doesn't want or need to be cured. This works as pretty good setup for her joining the Avengers, and then being seen multiple times in Fantastic Four if we just rearrange the release date of these episodes a little bit. Later on, Hulk meets Doctor Strange to battle his most destructive alternate personality, the Devil Hulk. This doesn't look or sound like the same Doctor Strange from Spider-Man and X-Men, but this and several other episodes of the show were written by John Semper Jr. Even if he changed his hairstyle and got a comfy sweater, nothing says this can't be the same Stephen Strange we've seen so many times already.
Thor, voiced by John Rhys Davies, appears in both Hulk and Fantastic Four as a heroic ally. Ghost Rider, voiced by Richard Grieco, hunts down the Hulk and also one-shots Galactus. Connections to FF and Iron Man are pretty undeniable here, but even X-Men get some ties too. Gargoyle from this show is kidnapped by Apocalypse when he was trying to use all the world's telepaths to break the time stream. See? He's just a little guy! And lastly, Doctor Strange and She-Hulk probe Banner's mind with magic and see a more heroic version of his inner self garbed in a familiar costume. Meaning, while he's never met the Webhead, he's at least aware of him and thinks he's a cool dude. Hulk's series is so thoroughly interwoven into this universe that we've already brought him up several times, so we can just move on to avoid getting overly redundant. This one's really cut and dry.
The Marvel Animated Universe lay dormant for decades, only appearing in questionably canon tie-in comics that we now know don't count. But in March of 2024, it made a triumphant return, including many of the original voice cast and the original writing team serving as consultants.
X-Men's original run didn't feature any story crossovers from the other shows, and instead the best they got was a team-up in Spider-Man series and multiple cameos in Fantastic Four. But X-Men 97 is a whole other story. You can kind of treat it like a brand new show, but in essence it's just season 6 of the original series and picks up immediately where they left off. And this time being made in the 2020s allows Marvel to carry on Larry's tradition of unspoken guest appearances without the stickiness of rights issues to contend with. X-Men 97 features several of the Marvel Action Hour characters including Iron Man, General Ross from the Incredible Hulk series, Dr. Doom is present and accounted for.
Do not mistake Doom's collusion as indifference to flagrant war crimes.
Next time I'll send memos.
And this season features the shape-shifting hero Morph turning specifically into the Hulk and Mr. Fantastic designs from those other shows. Spidey, of course, appears not once, but twice in X-Men 97, in and out of costume, as he witnesses the crazy, world-altering events unfolding as a result of Magneto's actions. Plus, the real MJ and his frenemy Flash Thompson are still around too. It's absolutely by design that these cameos are all in similar designs from the other series of the MAU. According to disgraced ex-Moon Knight ruiner Bo the Mayonnaise on Twitter, this season was written as if the other shows were canon, and that'll remain true unless Marvel Studios decides to go another direction. Well, there you go, that's from the head writer himself. It seems that X-Men 97 was created with all 5 shows being connected in mind, ignoring the official explanation that it was split into 2 and 3. But even this model has its own continuity quirks we'll have to figure out. As always, Iron Man is back to wearing his Model 1 armor, or something very similar to it, but this is during a massive EMP wave created by Magneto that's knocked out electrical power worldwide. In Iron Man's own series, the Mandarin used a similar power outage move on China, forcing Stark to don a biomechanical suit that was powered by his own body. Perhaps in the year of time since that happened and he joined the Avengers, he figured out how to adapt that power system into older armors and went for a more classic look than his later suits. The Captain America conundrum has been comfortably solved, I think, and him being here works just fine with everything else we've established, so long as future seasons don't have him say something like, "I was put on ice for 50 years," or some obnoxious shit like that. Hopefully they're content with just leaving it alone and being vague about it or just not saying anything. Or they did their homework and watched Spider-Man Season 5, but who knows. That being said, Captain America is in direct proximity to the biggest head-scratcher in the entire universe. T'Challa's alive dead dad!
You best pray our children read their textbooks more than their Bibles, for only history could be conned into forgiving us.
King T'Chaka is right.
In Fantastic Four's Prey of the Black Panther, we learn about T'Challa's history.
I have much explaining to do. It all began 10 years ago, when a scientist made his way to Wakanda.
Oh, he's voiced by Keith David? Holy shit! He's actually way younger in this iteration, probably in his early 20s when we meet him, making him about the same age as Spider-Man. He says that 10 years ago, the evil scientist Ulysses Klaue invaded Wakanda to steal vibranium from them. In the attack, he kills T'Challa's father, the previous king T'Chaka, and young T'Challa vows to avenge him by honing his skills as the Black Panther.
From this moment, Father, I live only to avenge this evil deed.
But in X-Men 97, during a United Nations meeting to discuss the global crisis caused by Magneto powering down the world, Iron Man and Captain America talked to King T'Chaka? See, this is an example of real-world stuff affecting the fiction, and we simply can't talk about it without mentioning the tragic and untimely passing of Chadwick Boseman. Since his passing, Disney has been weirdly paranoid about recasting King T'Challa or having the character appear in games and animation.
The lead writer of X-Men 97 was likely originally going to have T'Challa in the scene, but probably changed it because of how recently we lost Chadwick during the production cycle of this season.
Even though it causes major continuity issues. So, even though it makes no sense, T'Chaka is here as a stand-in for his son. There's really no way to explain this away, so we just have to accept it, that it's an error and this should be T'Challa like it was originally intended. But it's not, which sucks, but what can you do?
It was all going so well. Damn it! I mean, maybe that's T'Challa in disguise as his dad, so the outside world doesn't know that the leader of Wakanda was assassinated by a foreign invader. Could make them look weak on the world stage, and they're notorious for being a very isolated and secretive nation anyway.
What do we know about Wakanda?
Very little. They're an isolationist nation we're unable to get a look at. Satellite surveillance is blocked, and undercover efforts have failed.
Wouldn't be the first time they've given deceptive appearances to other world leaders, but 10 years is a long time to pretend the king is still alive if that was the case. That's the best explanation I've got. What else? Well, apparently Stark Enterprises changed their name because stupid movie synergy. A guy who writes for the Daily Bugle named Eddie Block exists, but in the comics Venom once used the alias Freddy Block to evade the cops. It's either him back at his old job with multiple acts of criminal violence hanging over his head, or just a dumb coincidence. So far, X-Men 97 has both comfortably rested itself in the MAU canon with all these cameos, and messed everything up royally with one of them. As the show's success continues to grow and more seasons are on the way, I'm filled with a sort of nerdy, existential dread. I'm so deep in the weeds now about this continuity stuff that it's a major factor in how I engage with these shows, and I can't turn it off. Every new episode makes me anxious that one of the new writers is going to get careless and throw in another casual moment that massively disturbs this delicately balanced continuity that's been pretty coherent for 30 years now. I've had fun learning about all this, but it's definitely going to be hard not to let it affect my enjoyment of future episodes if they mess up again in Season 2 onward, which we'll cover when all of those are completed as well. Here's hoping they keep things vague enough to make it all still work in the future and not get so specific and contradictory that I tear all my hair out like Uatu probably did watching all this.
It's true, that's actually what happened.
God, this is relentless. Let's take an intermission to talk about numbers, shall we?
Are you all right?
I'm familiar with different handbooks. I mean, I remember buying the Marvel Universe handbooks, like had all from A to Z way back when in the 90s, I guess, the first version of it.
Basically, every fan-made wiki on the subject of these shows uses the universe designation numbers from the official handbook of the Marvel Universe A to Z as their source for this, because really that's the only source for most of these. It's a nearly 3,000-page long encyclopedia on Marvel characters' fictional biographies and appearances, but it has a glossary section on the Marvel multiverse where the writers tried to apply as many numbers to different Marvel continuities as possible. A lot of alternate timelines, adaptations, or multiverse variants were made back in the day with no such naming convention in mind, so the wiki, for the sake of categorization, has to default to the handbook to distinguish so many of these conflicting versions of the characters from one another. We know all the main ones, like the original comic universe being Earth 616, the Ultimate Universe being 1610, MC2, etc. The goal of this list was to number everything else.
Oh, you guys sure must know a lot about the multiverse. You got someone going around naming realities.
Did a character create an alternate present after a botched time travel adventure? That's a universe with its own number. Every story in What If gets a number. Every cross-media adaptation gets a number, like the Howard the Duck movie, or Dolph Lundgren's Punisher, or Bill Bixby's Hulk series. The comic adaptation of any of those movies or shows is a different universe one number over. It's insanely thorough, and a lot of these timeline number designations have been taken pretty seriously by fans over the years. Sometimes these designations even worm their way into official stuff, like the Spider-Verse comics and the movie. But I don't think it's a reliable source for a multitude of reasons. People assume because it was published by Marvel with the word official in the title that it has to be accurate, completely infallible. But do you think someone actually went through and fact-checked all 3,000 pages of this to make sure there weren't any errors? I know for a fact they didn't. So I went digging through said handbook and I actually found these universe numbers assigned to the MAU, and in the pages itself it just says the X-Men cartoon and the Fantastic Four cartoon in two separate entries. The X-Men one doesn't even say it's connected to Spider-Man, that's just something fans have come to accept because the crossover episode was so undeniable. The Fantastic Four entry doesn't even explicitly state that it's connected to Iron Man or Hulk, but there's a link in the book for an unabridged version of the list. So I went to that website for the full multiverse list in the book's appendix on this crappy HTML-looking site. I actually had to find this page on the Wayback Machine because the normal link wasn't working anymore. The unabridged version actually goes so far as to list the entire DC multiverse as part of it too, which Marvel wouldn't actually publish in the printed version of the book. They just don't want to acknowledge that. But this unabridged version at least acknowledges the other three shows. However, this source is sketchy as hell to me because it's full of weird inconsistencies. Like naming the animated movie Marvel Ultimate Avengers and its direct sequel as two unrelated universes for no reason. Why? And by and large, these numbers are not based on anything in the material itself. These universes weren't named things like Earth 531,458 by the writer of the story. That was just something assigned by the writers of the list. What authority do they have over it? I think if I were to hazard a guess as to why the authors chose to break the MAU up this way, was because two of the shows were on the Fox network and the other three were on UPN. But even then, this page initially assigned Iron Man and Hulk as their own individual universes too, before later correcting them to be attached to Fantastic Four. It really seems like the writers of this were so inundated with thousands and thousands of different potential timelines to categorize that they didn't fact-check or cross-reference a few of these, and just based the assumption off them being on different networks, because a shared universe spanning multiple networks had never really been attempted before. I mean, when this was written, the MCU didn't really even exist yet. It was just the Iron Man movie, is what it says. This is the entry for the entire MCU? This is so old. This is so out of date that it's listing a potential Nick Fury solo movie happening after Avengers. This is what people are willing to stake their entire argument on, is this? You'd think the MCU would get a more proper number convention than just this garbage, which also has been used as an official source.
Don't even get me started on Doctor Strange and a little nerd back on Earth 1999-99.
Because this list has other incorrect entries or weird nonsense designations or just stuff Marvel wouldn't even actually acknowledge in print form, I really don't think it's an infallible source. The credibility here is actually pretty questionable. These are just arbitrary numbers slapped on at random so they could have a complete list. But this is easily disproved by just watching the shows and seeing for yourself that all 5 of them clearly bleed into each other and were designed that way. Character designer and director of X-Men, Larry Houston, later moved on to be the showrunner of Fantastic Four, and he put explicit ties to X-Men and Spider-Man in both of them to make the universe feel more interconnected. He says his attempts were unauthorized because of character rights being more strict at the time, but he did it anyway, and we can't just overlook all of this evidence of this being a shared universe. If you look at the bigger picture and ignore the stupid handbook numbering, it mostly fits. Like 98% of the time, this can all sensibly piece together. Damn it. Oh my god, it didn't stop making sense until X-Men 97, really. Regardless of this mountain of evidence that there is a shared continuity, it seems like everyone's still completely convinced they aren't in the same universe because of A, a number and a list that's basically a fan wiki made by someone with no real authority on the stories of these shows a decade after they ended, and B, because they haven't actually watched the shows themselves and are getting their info from an incorrect wiki source that has been spreading misinformation for like 20 years. But don't take it from me, let's ask a real source.
Yeah, that's not true. They're connected. At least the shows I was involved with, they're connected, so it's one universe.
And did the authors of the handbook contact Larry or the Leewalds or anyone to get their input before assigning this numbering?
Oh no, are you kidding me? They didn't contact me, the Leewalds, nobody. We're like out of sight, out of mind, you know. And no, nobody ever attempted to, like what you're doing, like give us a call. Hey, how about, have a question, you know, we can answer it real quick. All you have to do is just, you know, email, phone call, text, whatever it is, you know. But no one ever contacted any of us with any questions.
If any random goober with no connection to the creative teams of these shows can just spout out a random number and everyone just takes it as fact, then I'll say these 5 shows are actually in Universe 1160, because all the ones that matter have 6s and 1s. I didn't work on these shows, I have no authority to say this, but I put it on the internet, so it must be true. And really, trying to follow universe numbers affiliated with comic books is just a losing game. I dare you to keep track of how many things are called Earth 1 and Earth 2 in all the history of DC media, because the answer to what either of those actually are changes every few years.
We're going to Earth 2.
Back to my universe? Your universe? But this would be Earth 1. The real Earth?
Earth 9 Superman. Welcome to Earth 1.
Actually, we're Earth 1. What are we? 22.
And then, of course, Marvel's no saint with it either, because we have 3 different worlds classified as Earth 616 from different media that have no plans to clarify how that's supposed to work either.
Our universe is 838, and we've designated yours 616.
There's always the cop-out answer of, they're in separate multiverses, as if that makes any fucking sense at all. It's hard to take these numbers as gospel when they're so chronically unreliable as a real way to separate these pieces of fiction. Even if the Spider-Verse movies throw them up on screen as a cute little visual gag, I don't think we can take much stock in this list being the be-all, end-all way to sort all this out, because of how easy it is to contradict or retcon any of the names.
Earth 1999-99. 616.
This is why it's very rare that you'll hear me use universe numbering outside of the 3 most obvious ones for Marvel. Everything else is just too messy and inconsistent. I know people will swear by the handbook numbering until the end of days, but for me, I'll just defer to Larry.
It's one universe.
Okay, looks like we're going into overtime because there's 3 shows we still haven't solved yet. These all started around the same time, were produced by many of the same people behind the scenes, and even have some light implications about being connected to the other 5 shows. So the easiest answer is that they're also part of it, right? Well, nothing is ever that easy. Let's start with this one. Silver Surfer is not set in the Marvel Animated Universe. It's a good show, just not canon to all this. There.
Explain. They won't understand unless you explain.
Okay, fine. The next 3 shows are all in a way considered by fans to be light sequels or spin-offs of previous Marvel animated shows. Many people believe that the Silver Surfer we saw in both seasons of Fantastic Four got his own series. We finally got to see more of the thus far elusive Avengers in United They Stand, and Spider-Man Unlimited does have some clear ties to Spider-Man the Animated Series, but there's one common feature that breaks all 3 of them from fitting cleanly into the proper MAU lineup. For this section, we're going to use what I call the Maguire-Garfield clause. Alright, dig on this. Imagine if you were talking about Spider-Man movies with a friend, and then he just casually said, "Oh yeah, the Lizard was badass in Spider-Man 4, and then you were like, "Wait, what did you just say? There is no Spider-Man 4. And then this friend of yours says, "Yeah, there is. It came right after Spider-Man 3. It had Andrew Garfield in it." And you'd think this person is insane, right? Obviously, The Amazing Spider-Man is not the 4th film in the original Spider-Man movie continuity. It's a new telling of the same origin story and depicts several of the same story moments as happening similarly, but differently. It features many of the same characters, but these are undoubtedly new versions of them that have incompatible continuity with the previous ones. Norman and Harry Osborn in The Amazing Spider-Man 2 can't be the same ones from the Raimi trilogy. Both of those guys died already and were written completely differently. Emma Stone is not the same Gwen Stacy that was played by Bryce Dallas Howard. I'm sorry, but your friend is a dumb idiot moron for thinking these are the same iteration of the franchise. That's the Maguire-Garfield clause. It's a different telling of the same story. I say, if it covers the same event in a way that's too different to reconcile, then it's not a continuation of one of those previous shows, it's just a different show about that same story, being told differently. And Silver Surfer is a very obvious example of this. In Fantastic Four, the Surfer visits Earth for the first time.
Such energy. Galactus shall feast as never before.
Regains his humanity.
I cannot bear the thought of the fate such noble beings as you will suffer.
And vows to keep his master Galactus, the devourer of worlds, from eating us all.
If I must choose between you and Earth, the Surfer stands with Earth.
You, my once and former herald, I hereby exile you to the planet you have saved. For the rest of your days, I condemn you to this minor galaxy.
Later on, the Fantastic Four meet a girl named Frankie Ray.
Sure. Make it to Frankie. That's me.
The Human Torch accidentally activates a latent flame-based superpower in her that she gained when she was a child during a lab accident.
Come on, Johnny. Let's light up the skies. Teach me some of those killer moves of yours.
Now she becomes a superhero named Nova. No, a different one, but it's spelled the same. Galactus returns to Earth with the intention of finally eating all of us and a new herald named Terrax. After Ghost Rider shows up and puts Galactus on his ass, it's just as random as it sounds, the FF save him and then convince Galactus that they can be his allies instead of his food. He ditches the traitorous Terrax and takes on Nova as his new herald.
And I will become your new herald.
Frankie, no!
Behold, Nova, herald to Galactus.
Frankie!
Imbuing her with the power cosmic, and they take off never to be seen again. Silver Surfer's solo series also depicts Silver Surfer visiting Earth for the first time.
Do these beings not realize that their world is coming to an end?
This time with no Fantastic Four in sight.
I seem to be making a habit of falling out of this world's sky.
Ever consider getting into a 12-step program for that? But the name's Frankie. Frankie Ray.
And he regains his humanity on his own and vows to keep Galactus from eating us all.
Do what you will, my former master, but I cannot allow you to kill anymore. I must make my stand.
Your stand will destroy you. Norrin Rand, we can trust each other no more. Consider this world a parting gift. Go! You are condemned!
Then immediately after, Galactus chooses a random human, Frankie Ray, to become his new herald and turns her into Nova, imbuing her with the power cosmic.
I can extend to you the gift of fire.
Nova, herald of Galactus.
It's doing all the same story beats again, but differently. MAU Frankie is an adult, but in the Silver Surfer series she's clearly a teenager, with a notably different origin story that can't match up. The other biggest point of divergence is that MAU Galactus exiles the Surfer to Earth, locking him behind an invisible barrier around our planet.
He didn't know Galactus left a cosmic force barrier to keep the Surfer trapped on Earth.
Though invisible, its walls are thicker and more powerful than any prison made of stone.
Then he stays there just to get repeatedly jacked by Dr. Doom in 2 separate season finales.
The power of the Surfer's strength flows through me now. His skills are mine.
Once again, the Silver Surfer's power cosmic is mine. Power enough to challenge Galactus himself.
Who then crosses the space barrier and loses the power cosmic he stole from Surfer on both occasions. Dumbass. The solo Surfer is exiled by Galactus but has no such conditions on his ability to travel, and instead becomes a nomad through space, traveling from planet to planet and meeting various cosmic heroes. The only stipulation is that his home planet, Zenn-La, has been moved somewhere else in the universe.
I said that you could leave me, but never did I say you could return to Zenn-La.
So mighty is Galactus that he has moved Zenn-La to a place where it is hidden.
One Surfer is trapped on Earth, having to learn to coexist with the creatures there, and the other is a lone wanderer searching through the vastness of space for his lost home. These are both great takes on the character, but they're definitely not the same guy. The Silver Surfer series has the best art design and visuals of every cartoon on this list. This is the best example of Jack Kirby art brought to life in animation we've ever seen, and the writing in this show is stellar. The stories are epic in scale and thematically heavy, and the dialogue is pure poetry. I wish this show took off because it's incredible. I highly recommend you check it out if you haven't already. Silver Surfer was unfortunately cancelled after only 1 season, but tentative plans for Season 2 would be that he met the Fantastic Four, and it would have been a new version of them separate from the one that we saw previously. This show is really cool, and I wish so badly that it was in the MAU. But it isn't. If it was, we would have gotten an excellent MAU version of Thanos, Nebula, Drax the Destroyer, Gamora, Adam Warlock, and Beta Ray Bill. But sadly, we just can't make it work. Damn! We were so close to a workable Guardians of the Galaxy roster. So, alas, it's a new version of the Surfer separate from the MAU one. However, this show is in the same universe as King of the Hill, so there's that.
Mr. Surfer, have you ever considered propane as an alternative energy source for that board of yours? Being that you're my neighbor and I like you, I'm going to give you the new neighbor discount and a free t-shirt. With repeat business like that, I could eventually be supplying propane galaxy-wide.
Avengers United They Stand is far and away my least favorite of all of these shows, but even still, I'm open to the idea of it being canon just because the universe being larger is fun. It was worked on by our friends Eric and Julia, so maybe they left some ties to X-Men in there that we can excavate. I want this to be inclusive, not exclusive. I like this world having so much depth and so many different characters and storylines. If this show did count, that would mean we'd get MAU versions of Kang the Conqueror, Ant-Man, the Wasp, Ultron, the Vision... there it is. Avengers United They Stand shows us an Avengers who have been around for a little while, and 3 of the original founding members have left the team, with Ant-Man now serving as the leader for a mostly new generation of Avengers. The show is very thorough about telling you which superheroes specifically were founders of the Avengers. Even the tie-in comic goes over it.
Captain America is more than that. He practically founded the Avengers.
Yes. Along with Iron Man, Thor, Ant-Man, and Wasp.
I'm not exactly Captain America, or Thor, or Iron Man, now am I?
Hank, we helped form the Avengers, and don't you forget that.
Who was the founding roster of the MAU Avengers? We have no idea, actually. We have a pretty good idea who it could not have been, though. The problem with this is that the MAU version of the Avengers are often mentioned, but rarely seen.
We're at the Avengers Mansion.
And their roster is heavily subject to change. The only thing we know about them for sure is that while they do both become members at some point, Iron Man and Captain America are not founding members of the team in this universe. Spider-Man mentions the Avengers as far back as his first episode, which takes place in 1994.
Ugh. You don't find the Fantastic Four in a sewer, or the Avengers. Never have I seen the Avengers in a sewer.
During that time, Iron Man only recently became a superhero and is the leader of his own LA-based super team called ForceWorks. Captain America would not become available to join the team until at least 1996, when the Beyonder presumably freed him from the antimatter vortex. Iron Man only seemingly joins the team after ForceWorks has disbanded in Season 2 of his series, and we see that he's on the Avengers with a Clint Barton version of Goliath. That works because he knew Barton as Hawkeye from before, and they maybe could have joined the team around the same time as Cap, but none of them had time to be founding members. That, and they're on the team with Vision. Vision is a huge breaking point. Vision joins the Avengers in United They Stand in their first episode, but this episode establishes that the team has been around for so long that the show takes place in the near future, and everything is given a more slick sci-fi aesthetic in an attempt to compete with Batman Beyond.
It's so modern. It's ultra-modern. Like living in the not-too-distant future.
Even though the episode Kang came out in 1999, the eponymous time-traveling villain still says this must be the 21st century.
And I suppose this is sometime in the 21st century.
Which is defined as beginning on January 1st, 2001. Vision can't join the team for the first time in the near sci-fi future and be on it in the mid-90s at the same time. Kang uses his time distortion technology to age everyone to death, and this kid clearly has a Ben 10 shirt on, so this show has to at least take place after 2005. I'm kidding, that one's not real evidence, but that's still kind of crazy if you look at that. What is that? United They Stand version of Hawkeye seems to have no real connection to Iron Man, and instead says that Wonder Man is the reason he became an Avenger.
Clint, I wouldn't have been an Avenger without Wonder Man. And I'm not gonna rest until I find him.
Implying that he was the one who recruited him. Also, he's clearly in love with Wonder Man. We learned about Clint's history in the circus with Swordsman as his mentor, and Scarlet Witch talks about learning sorcery from Agatha Harkness in New Salem, Colorado. Yet neither of them hint at being on a team together before this, or having some kind of storied history with Iron Man. Then again, like we said, it's better to say nothing at all than something that contradicts. But even still, there's just not much connective tissue we can use to tie this Avengers to that Avengers. No continuity clues or shared history we can piece together. And the United They Stand roster is just way too clean and consistent to be this absolute circus of an Avengers team. Who even counts as being an Avenger here? Are Justice and Rage official members too, since they were in the comics for about 5 minutes? But then it looks like the other New Warriors are just there to help out, so maybe it's two superhero teams cross-pollinating a single rescue operation? Or do Justice and Rage have dual membership for both teams? How is Hawkeye there as Goliath, but we don't see Hank Pym anywhere? Is Thor on the team? He's also in this episode, but he never interacts with or mentions the Avengers at any point, so I don't think we can count him as a member. She-Hulk, Hawkeye, Iron Man, and Captain America all joined later after it was formed, so who the hell started it? Were the Avengers co-founded by Ant-Man and fucking Hercules? The former of which quit at some point? If none of these guys were on the team until the mid-90s, then how did the Super Adaptoid look like that in the flashbacks to the 80s? Is this robot a time traveler? Oh my god! I don't know. Of the three of them, this show is the only one I could maybe be convinced is in the MAU if you could do some serious mental gymnastics to solve the contradictions with the founding members. But as it is, nothing about the history of the Avengers fits with this version of the team we see in the other shows, so I'm gonna say no, this is most likely not a continuation. Spider-Man Unlimited has had a weird relationship with its predecessor since the very beginning. Earlier in development, it was supposed to be an animated one-to-one recreation of early Steve Ditko Spider-Man, then it pivoted to more of a 2099 thing, and then it turned into a hybrid of new and old in an attempt to avoid comparisons with Batman Beyond. It's still Peter Parker as the main character, and the setup is so neutral that it very well may be a continuation of Spider-Man the Animated Series, despite having a revamped voice cast and art style. Like, what if this is just what happened the following year after he got MJ back from being lost in the multiverse?
Well, let's look at the real-world facts first. Some of the marketing says this show takes place in the year 2099.
So you think you already know the legend. A radioactive spider bite gives Peter Parker the special powers to become Spider-Man. Well, things are about to change. The year is 2099. Earth receives a cry for help from another world. To defend himself in this hostile environment, Spider-Man unleashes a new array of high-tech devices. And hold on tight as a legendary action hero grabs hold of the future. Spider-Man Unlimited.
But I think that's genuinely just the guys cutting the trailers, working on incomplete or old information, because nothing in the show gives even the slightest hint of that. Everything on Earth looks like 1999. just the same as it always has. Counter-Earth is futuristic because it's a different planet that's been taken over by a mad scientist named the High Evolutionary. His flying cars and robot police force are just part of how they distinguish Counter-Earth from normal Earth. So it presumably takes place in the present day, which is a point that it could be canon to Spider-Man the Animated Series. I mean, look, they even reused the theme song.
What could possibly be?
That has to count for something, right? In a Facebook post on his personal blog, the showrunner for Spider-Man the Animated Series, John Semper Jr., has gone on record that he absolutely doesn't consider this a sequel to his show, and is even kind of insulted that they tried to frame it that way.
When writing Venom's character, it was always hard to remember that he never spoke in the singular. He only spoke in the plural. The first thing I noticed in that flawed Spider-Man Unlimited series that followed ours was they had Venom and Carnage in the first episode, and they were both speaking in the singular.
You and I will merge and be one, as it always should have been!
That's how I knew right away that the writers of that short-lived series hadn't done their homework. And let me state for the record that my series and that Unlimited series are not connected in any way, shape, or form. I had nothing to do with Spider-Man Unlimited.
But I think some of the people who worked on Spider-Man Unlimited were under the impression that it was a sequel, or maybe a midquel? In 1999, Wizard Magazine issue 97, oh cute, they published a brief interview with producer Will Munio, who talked about the series as if it was a continuation. And the article says Unlimited fits into the latter half of Spider-Man Season 4 or between Seasons 4 and 5, while Peter and MJ's water clone were still engaged. So that's the water clone, apparently? The article doesn't attribute that information directly to Munio, so it's unclear where that's coming from, but I think he would have had to be the one that said it if they bothered including that. So do we believe Semper or Munio? It's taking one creator's word over another. Who's to say one has more authority than the other one does? That's where things get kind of tricky. I will say though, Wizard Magazine's proposed timeline doesn't work at all. In Spider-Man Season 4, Episode 9, Peter Parker reveals his secret identity to the Mary Jane clone at the end. Season 4, Episode 10 picks up immediately after that one left off, and in this episode he proposes to Hydra MJ. Because of her just showing back up after disappearing for a few months, they decide to expedite the wedding plans because life is too short and sometimes you're made of water and just die too fast. No! So she says in that episode they'll be married by this time next month.
Our minds are made up. By this time next month, we'll be Mr. and Mrs. Peter Parker.
We've got a window of 1 month that they were engaged. Then in Season 4, Episode 11, Peter and MJ have moved into a new apartment where Peter gets mixed up in a crazy set of circumstances involving the Prowler. But he says they just moved in together recently and the wedding hasn't happened yet.
Come on, Parker. You only just moved here. Give the place a chance. It might not be so bad after all. Uh-oh. But do I have any right to move MJ here after we're married? And since this is all I can afford, maybe I don't have any right to marry her either.
So in that month of time, they also had to pack up and move out of May and Aunt Anna's respective houses to get their own place. And then he appears multiple times throughout this story involving the Prowler that happens over the course of at least a few weeks, with Hobie Brown being in and out of prison and then going after the Kingpin. The immediate following episode is the actual wedding itself. So he proposes in episode 10, and then gets married only a month later in the season 5 premiere, which is again only 2 episodes later. And we see him being clearly really busy on Earth screwing around with the Prowler in the interim. And moving takes a long time, are you kidding? He did not have time to do the entirety of Spider-Man Unlimited in there. That show makes it clear he's been stranded on Counter-Earth for multiple months as it goes on.
Jameson's still alive. And this time, if Spider-Man can't help him, maybe Peter Parker can.
Everything checks out. The Solaris 2 rescue mission is ready for liftoff.
It's been more than 2 weeks, Peter. I'm sorry, but you've got to bring in some money. I can't keep subsidizing you.
And then they never explained how he even got home because it ended on a cliffhanger. I just really can't buy that over a dozen adventures on an alien planet happen randomly between these 2 episodes. If this happened at any point, it would have to be after Season 5, and this would have to be the real MJ for this to make any sense. But even then, X-Men 97 doesn't make that timeline easy now, because we see MAU Peter is still on Earth in the year 1997 after this show wrapped up. Then, of course, there's questionably canon tie-in material. The Spider-Man Unlimited tie-in comic features a story where he travels outside of the bounds of Manhattan to see what the rest of Counter-Earth is like, and meets an alternate version of Gwen Stacy. He reacts to seeing her like, this is a big deal, but MAU Spidey doesn't have his own Gwen Stacy, and only met a version of her while multiverse hopping in Season 5 during Spider-Wars.
Whoa, wait, stop!
Hey, can't your fiancé give you a kiss anymore?
Great, Parker. Here you're engaged to somebody you don't even know.
In the comic, it's left vague what his history is with her, but I think the implication was that he saw her die on normal Earth before he got here, based on his reaction. I just don't feel like he'd have this same moment if he had seen her just, oh yeah, you're that girl from when I was hopping universes. Then again, the tie-in comic also switches Naoko's ex-husband from being Counter-Earth Goblin to Counter-Earth Wolverine. So this book isn't even 100% canon to the cartoon it's based on. Ugh, yeah, it's still inconclusive, I say. Okay, let's turn to the show itself instead. None of this outside stuff is helping. Spidey Unlimited runs us through his history with Venom and Carnage in the episode One is the Loneliest Number. As we can see, a lot of it mirrors the alien costume saga from Spider-Man the Animated Series almost perfectly. Even if it's shortened and animated differently, from Jameson's shuttle crash on the bridge, to Spidey tearing the suit off at the bell tower and Eddie being tied up below, him being fully clothed instead of in his underwear can just be artistic license once again. Clothes, voices, and haircuts change, remember? But then it gets weird from here. His initial battle with Venom is presumably mostly the same, based on the way he describes it.
It was the toughest fight of my life, but I finally beat him.
But somehow Unlimited Spidey beat him in a way that didn't involve the sound of a rocket taking off, and he's left in a soupy puddle of Eddie on the street as he's picked up by S.H.I.E.L.D. The helicarrier comes down to make Venom's arrest instead of the security guards at the New York rocket base. I would like to once again chalk that up to artistic license, but then the story diverges. Eddie and Cletus Cassidy are no longer cellmates, but they're trapped in some kind of mental institution in padded cells instead of a typical prison. Eddie breaks into Cletus's neighboring cell and then intentionally infects him with the Carnage symbiote to turn him into an ally. In Spider-Man the Animated Series, it was Baron Mordo and Dormammu that led the Red Baby symbiote back to Cletus. Eddie wasn't even there at the time. And Eddie and Cletus historically hated each other because they were closer to their comic counterparts. Carnage and Venom worked together only one time before becoming sworn enemies. And they were later banished to the Dark Dimension together while Eddie and Spider-Man were stopping Dormammu from entering the human world. There's no mention or even hint of Unlimited's Venom and Carnage being enemies at any point or being pulled into the Dark Dimension, and Unlimited Spidey consistently describes them as being allies and partners.
Until he met his soon-to-be partner in slime, Carnage.
With a common goal of taking over the world. Unlimited Venom and Carnage not only work together, but they seem to be friends and even call each other brothers.
You can't contain us! What have you done with our brother Venom?
Instead of their original father and son dynamic.
Why did Dormammu send you? Didn't he trust us?
Eddie!
You're just a sentimental old fool. Dad. Dad! Ready for some father-son quality time?
The only context in which Venom and Carnage aren't on the same team is when Eddie is temporarily disbanded from his alien costume, which has a really strong mind control over him and makes him evil.
There is no Eddie Brock, only Venom! We have returned! And we are angry!
But within a few seconds of bonding again, he's right back to being Carnage's best pal. MAU Eddie had to fight against the symbiote's violent impulses, but he was still able to control it instead of the other way around. Unlimited Eddie has also never been separated from his symbiote until now.
Over the years, Brock's been completely subsumed by the symbiote. No telling what's happened to his mind in all this time.
He may not even remember who I am.
Parker!
While the animated series Eddie went without it for over a year while it was still in space and he rotted in prison with Cassidy. And that reminds me, the only thing that could defeat Venom in the old series was the sound of a rocket roaring to life on takeoff. But this Venom is latched to the side of a rocket completely unfazed, so it seems his tolerance for loud noises must be higher.
Hey, you two could never morph like that before.
To think of it, him and Carnage can also morph into a liquid form even with a human host still inside, so it just seems symbiotes have very different powers and properties in this universe. The other main villain of Unlimited, the High Evolutionary, is a completely different take on the character from his MAU counterpart, seen in X-Men.
I am the High Evolutionary.
In X-Men, the High Evolutionary has set up his kingdom, named Wundagore, in the fictional European country named Transia, which borders Romania. It's actually from the comics, it's kind of cool. He declares that he's been here for decades, building his colony of new men, which are animal-human hybrid experiments.
Creation is painstaking work. It has taken me decades to create this small colony of enhanced creatures.
You've seen Guardians 3, you know the gist of this guy. Come on, let's keep it going. Spider-Man Unlimited's version of the High Evolutionary is a traveler from regular Earth who landed on Counter-Earth in what appeared to be their weird, slightly sci-fi version of World War II, because their history mirrors ours until he changed everything.
I am not native to this world.
50 years ago, he created the Bestials and turned the humans into the dregs of society. No one knows why.
Karen O'Malley, the leader of the human resistance, says he arrived on this world 50 years ago and has spent that entire time creating the society they now live in, where the new men are the top of the social hierarchy and native humans are treated like low-class peasantry. He even has his own castle Wundagore just outside of Manhattan. Both versions of the High Evolutionary have spent decades building their respective communities and castles, and I just really can't see them being the same guy having the time to travel back and forth between both planets, tending to one or the other.
So I guess the big question on everyone's minds is, will it canon?
I don't get it. Is that from something?
Hi, I'm a digital clone of James from the Watchtower database that was trapped inside the body of a sentient robot from the future during an attempted hostile takeover of the channel to cover exclusively the obscure DC animated series The Zeta Project. But you can call me Willie.
Ooh, distinguished competition.
Who invited the clanker?
Whoa, chill!
My sensors detected a high concentration of canon discussion emanating from Earth's moon. Do you need my help fitting a piece of fiction into the DC animated universe? My can and I are fully functional.
No, we're watching Marvel cartoons. You like those too, right? Oh, look who's too good for us with his shared cartoon universe with unmodeled animation, consistent art styles, and Lex Luthor for president.
Fine, just give me the data. I'll see if I can make heads or tails of it. And by the way, Lewinsky's dress is canon to the DCAU. Oh my god, not off to a good start, guys. I'm sorry, I can't make this fit. This is some Brainiac Attacks level of, well, don't make me say it.
It's okay, you don't have to.
Not canon!
Really? None of them?
Well, there is one possible solution, but you're not gonna like it. Or you will like it. I don't know. I don't know who you are or how this is happening.
Oh shit, the watch is coming back. We gotta wrap this up.
Hello? Was that a toilet? Are you guys watching that skibbity stuff? Is that still funny? Was that ever funny? How do they just get away with using Valve IP? That's just Citizen Mike from Half-Life 2 in a toilet. Hello? Yeah, they're gone.
Spidey himself, and presumably his history as a superhero, is probably incredibly similar to the MAU version. But his villains are just too irreconcilably different to make it match up nicely. I think we have to pull the Maguire-Garfield clause for all three of his main bad guys. They're all similar stories, just told too differently to match up, so my prognosis is that they're just new versions of the same characters with different histories. I like Spidey Unlimited a lot more than the average person. It has great art design, cool new characters, an interesting premise, and a stellar voice cast, but as much as I would like it to be a continuation of the previous show, it really can't fit together with it from a continuity standpoint. There's just too much that doesn't align. But remember, whether or not something is canon to something else is not a sign of quality. We're not operating off the rules that canon equals good and non-canon equals bad. We're just trying to figure out what goes where in this big, crazy animated multiverse based on what we can observe and what we know from the creators. As far as I can tell, this graphic is the best answer for the continuity in these shows. But please don't see this grouping as something invalidating. Try as I may, I couldn't find anything to say these shows aren't connected to each other as some kind of MAU2, considering their more futuristic shared art direction, slightly off-kilter retellings of previous MAU stories, and generally coming out around the same time. These could easily be a shared universe of their own that all coexist with the MAU as we know it, which I tried to reflect in issue 3 of my fan comic with a cheeky Avengers cameo.
Do you understand now? Do you see the source of my frustration and my sorrows? How easily the truth has been lost because of a cascading game of telephone through the generations?
Yeah, it's actually pretty obvious how it all works if you just watch all the shows and see for yourself.
But that's just it, isn't it? No one actually watches these things. They take their information secondhand, and then they so comfortably and confidently spread lies and confusion. For so long I've been alone, the only one who sees the bigger picture, the only one who actually watches.
I guess I could see why that would drive you a little crazy, knowing the answers and seeing thousands of people get it wrong all the time. I think the most valuable lesson here is to do your own research. When you're trying to find answers to life's questions, even silly ones like this, you can't always just take the internet's collective word for it. Sometimes a source, no matter how legit it may seem on the surface, can just be wrong for one reason or another. It's important to do your own independent research and cross-reference with what other people are saying. You can listen to someone else tell you the answers all day, but sometimes the only way to know for sure is with your own eyes and ears. Maybe we even got something wrong, and the best way you can know for sure is to just sit back and watch for yourself.
You've done well at combating misinformation, but now the ultimate question remains. What is the timeline?
Who fucking cares? What?
Can you drop me off at the Bronx, please?
I always get mad at YouTube for not putting my videos in the subscription box because people will comment, "Finally, Xavier uploads again after all these years," not knowing 3 other videos came out within the last month already. So maybe that stupid bell icon thing will help you remember I exist. If you want other ways to support the channel, you can always go hit up that Patreon for early videos and exclusive stuff because it's just $1. I'm not kidding, it's only $1. Isn't that cool? If just 5% of the people subscribed to me donated only $1 a month, I could make videos even faster and keep my house. You can also check out our merch on TeePublic, or just buy some of my random stuff on eBay. I have a pretty substantial collection of old toys that are still in the box in perfect condition, so go take a look in case you find something you like. And lastly, since this is a YouTube video and you probably play Fortnite, drop my creator code XavierGM next time you buy a silly dance or a cool character skin. Really helps me out. See you next time.